Hey everyone, imagine this. A quiet Ohio town where nothing much happens, and then one day, a beloved retired teacher just vanishes. No note, no warning, just gone. Her name was Clara Hensley, a woman who spent 30 years shaping young minds, known for her warm smile and endless patience. She was the kind of person who'd stop to help a stranger, the kind who'd give you her last dollar if you needed it. So when her neighbors woke up one morning to find her house empty, her car missing, and no sign of her anywhere, the whole town was left whispering, "What happened to Clara?" For 8 long months, the question hung in the air like a fog that wouldn't lift. Search parties scoured the fields, the woods, the riverbanks. Flyers with her picture were plastered on every lamppost, every storefront. People prayed, hoped, and waited. But as the weeks turned into months, hope started to fade. That is, until one chilly morning, when a hiker stumbled across something in a nearby forest that made their blood run cold. Clara's car, abandoned, half hidden by overgrown vines, deep in the woods just miles from her home. How did it get there? Where was Clara? And why did it feel like the answers were only raising more questions? Now, let me take you to another story, one that seems worlds apart but somehow feels connected. Picture a crowded city bus, the kind where everyone squeezed in, trying not to make eye contact. There's a young black teen, Jamal Carter, just 17, heading home from school with his backpack slung over one shoulder. He's got his earbuds in, lost in his music, but he notices a pregnant woman struggling to stand as the bus jolts along. She's white, maybe in her 30s, looking exhausted, her hand resting on her belly. Without a second thought, Jamal stands up and offers her a seat. It's a small gesture, the kind of thing most people wouldn't think twice about. But this woman? She looks at him, her eyes soft with gratitude, and as she sits down, she slips a folded piece of paper into his hand. Jamal doesn't think much of it at first. He tucks it into his pocket, figuring it's just a thank you note. But when he gets home and unfolds it, his heart stops. The words scribbled on that paper are about to change his life in ways he never could have imagined. These two stories, one of a missing teacher and a car found in a forest, the other of a simple act of kindness leading to something extraordinary, might seem unrelated, but there's a thread that ties them together. It's about people, their choices, and the ripple effects that can stretch across time and place. Clara's disappearance shook her small Ohio town to its core. She wasn't just a teacher. She was a pillar, someone who'd spent decades giving kids like Jamal the tools to dream bigger. Her house on Maple Street was always open. Kids would stop by for advice, for a cookie, for a place to feel safe. When she vanished, it wasn't just her absence that hurt. It was the mystery. Her car, a beat-up old sedan she'd driven for years, was gone too. No one saw her leave. No one heard a thing. The police combed through her life, looking for clues. Was she running from something? Did someone take her? Or did Clara, the woman who seemed to have it all together, have secrets no one knew? Meanwhile, Jamal's life was moving in a different direction. He was just a kid from the city, trying to keep his head down and stay out of trouble. School was tough, money was tight, and his mom worked double shifts to keep the lights on. That day on the bus, when he gave up his seat, he wasn't expecting anything in return. He was raised to do the right thing, even when no one's watching. But that note in his pocket? It wasn't just a thank you. It was a promise, a key to something bigger, something that could pull him out of the struggles he'd grown up with. As he read the words, his hands shook. Was this real? Could a single moment of kindness really change everything? And what did this woman know about him that made her choose him for this? Back in Ohio, the discovery of Clara's car sent shockwaves through the town. The forest where it was found wasn't far from her house, maybe a 20-minute drive, but it was dense, the kind of place you could get lost in if you didn't know your way. The hiker who found it said the car looked like it had been there for months, leaves piled on the hood, tires sinking into the mud. The police roped off the area, searching for anything that could explain what happened. Was Clara in the car when it ended up there? Did she drive it herself? Or was someone else behind the wheel? The doors were unlocked, the keys still in the ignition, but there was no sign of Clara. No purse, no phone. Nothing to say where she'd gone. The town buzzed with theories. Some said she'd left on purpose, maybe to start over somewhere new. Others whispered darker ideas. An accident, a crime, something no one wanted to say out loud. Jamal, on the other hand, was wrestling with his own mystery. The note from the woman on the bus wasn't just words on paper. It was an invitation, a chance to step into a world he'd never dreamed of. But it came with questions. Who was this woman? Why did she pick him? And what did she mean by, "You're meant for more"? He couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't random, that somehow this moment was tied to something bigger. He started asking around, trying to piece together who she was. A friend at school thought he'd seen her before, maybe at a community event, but the details were fuzzy. The more Jamal dug, the more he realized this wasn't just about him. It was about a connection he didn't yet understand. In Ohio, the search for Clara was hitting dead ends. The police brought in dogs, drones, even divers to check the nearby river, but nothing turned up. Her family, her sister, and her grown nephew were desperate for answers. They went on the news, pleading for anyone with information to come forward. Clara's sister, Ellen, kept saying she wouldn't just leave. Not Clara. She loved this town, these kids. But as the days passed, even Ellen started to wonder. Clara had been quieter in the months before she disappeared. She'd mentioned feeling restless, like something was missing. Did she go looking for it? Or did something or someone find her first? Jamal's search for answers was just beginning. The note had a phone number, but when he called, it went straight to voicemail. He left a message, unsure if he'd ever hear back. Days passed, and he kept the note in his pocket, reading it over and over, trying to make sense of it. His mom noticed he was distracted, asking what was wrong, but Jamal didn't know how to explain. How do you tell someone a stranger's note might hold the key to your future? And yet, every time he thought about it, he felt a spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, this was his way out, his chance to be something more. The stories of Clara and Jamal are about more than a missing teacher or a life-changing note. They're about the choices we make, the people we touch, and the mysteries that linger when someone disappears, or when someone sees something in you that you didn't see in yourself. In Ohio, the forest held secrets the town was desperate to uncover. What happened to Clara's car? Where was she now? And for Jamal, the note was only the beginning. What did it mean, and where would it lead him? 2 stories, 2 lives, and a world of questions waiting to be answered. Stick around, because you won't believe what happens next. The forest around Clara's car was eerily quiet, the kind of quiet that makes your skin prickle. The police had set up floodlights, their beams cutting through the early morning mist, illuminating the rusted sedan that looked like it had been swallowed by the woods. Officers moved carefully, their boots crunching on fallen leaves as they searched for anything, a footprint, a scrap of fabric, a clue to where Clara might be. The car was a time capsule, a half-empty coffee cup in the center console, a folded sweater in the back seat, a worn-out map of Ohio tucked in the glove box. But there was nothing that screamed answers. The townsfolk gathered at the edge of the crime scene tape, their faces a mix of worry and curiosity. Clara Hensley wasn't just a teacher to them. She was family. Her disappearance had left a hole in their small community, and now, finding her car felt like a cruel tease. Was she out there somewhere, lost in the forest? Or had something worse happened? The hiker who found the car, a middle-aged man named Tom, couldn't stop shaking as he told the police what he'd seen. It was just there, he said, his voice unsteady, like it had been parked and forgotten. I didn't touch anything, I swear. But the police weren't focused on Tom. They were trying to figure out how a car could sit undiscovered for 8 months, just a few miles from Clara's house, in a forest everyone thought they'd searched. Back in the city, Jamal was still turning that note over in his mind. The words were simple but heavy. You're meant for more. Call me. Then a phone number, written in neat, looping handwriting. He tried calling again, but the voicemail was generic, no name, just a robotic voice asking him to leave a message. He didn't know what to say, so he'd hung up after a few seconds of silence. Sitting on his bed, the note spread out in front of him, Jamal felt a mix of excitement and unease. He wasn't used to things like this. Random acts of kindness didn't usually come with mysterious notes. His mom, Lisa, noticed he was quieter than usual at dinner. "You okay, baby?" she asked, her eyes tired but warm. Jamal nodded, not ready to tell her about the note. How could he explain something he didn't understand himself? Instead, he asked about her day, trying to shift the focus. Lisa worked as a nurse, pulling long shifts at the hospital, and she always had stories, funny ones about patients, sad ones about the ones who didn't make it. But tonight, Jamal barely heard her. His mind was on the woman from the bus, her tired smile, and the way she'd looked at him, like she knew something he didn't. In Ohio, the investigation into Clara's disappearance was picking up steam, but it was also stirring up more questions than answers. The police brought in a forensic team to go over the car, dusting for fingerprints, checking for DNA. They found Clara's prints, of course, but nothing else. No signs of a struggle, no blood, nothing to suggest foul play. That only made things stranger. If Clara had driven the car into the forest herself, why? And where did she go after? The forest wasn't exactly a place you could wander off from without a trace. It was thick with brambles and uneven ground, the kind of place where you'd leave something behind, a shoe, a scarf, something. But there was nothing. The townsfolk started talking, their theories growing wilder by the day. Some said Clara had a secret life, maybe a lover no one knew about. Others thought she might have been depressed, hiding it behind her sunny smile. Her sister, Ellen, shut down those rumors fast. Clara wasn't like that. She told anyone who'd listen. She was happy. She loved her life. But even Ellen couldn't ignore the nagging doubt. Clara had been acting different in those last few months. Quieter, more distracted. She'd stopped hosting her usual Sunday dinners, stopped calling as often. Ellen had chalked it up to retirement blues, but now she wondered if it was something more. Jamal, meanwhile, was starting to feel like he was chasing a ghost. He'd shown the note to his best friend, Marcus, who thought it was either a scam or some kind of prank. "You sure she didn't just give you her number 'cause she thought you were cute?" Marcus teased, dodging the pillow Jamal threw at him. But Marcus's joking didn't ease the knot in Jamal's stomach. He couldn't stop thinking about the woman's eyes, the way they'd locked onto his, like she was seeing right through him. He decided to do some digging. He remembered she'd been carrying a tote bag with a logo on it, some kind of charity or organization maybe? It was a blurry memory, but he sketched it out on a piece of paper, hoping it might jog something. He started asking around at school, showing the sketch to anyone who'd listen. Most people just shrugged, but one girl, Aisha, paused when she saw it. "That looks like the logo for that community center downtown," she said, squinting. "The one that does free tutoring and stuff." Jamal's heart skipped a beat. It was a lead, a small one, but it was something. He decided he'd check it out after school, even if it meant skipping basketball practice. Back in Ohio, the town was grappling with its own leads, or lack thereof. The police had interviewed everyone close to Clara, her neighbors, her former colleagues, even the kids she'd tutored after retirement. No one had anything concrete. Her neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, an older woman who'd known Clara for decades, mentioned something odd. "She was out in her garden a lot those last few weeks," she said. "More than usual. And sometimes, late at night, I'd see her car pull out, then come back hours later." The police pressed her for details, but Mrs. Jenkins didn't have much else. "I thought she was just running errands," she admitted, her voice trembling. The idea of Clara sneaking off at night didn't fit with the woman everyone knew, but it was enough to make the police take a closer look at her house. They searched her garden, her shed, even the crawl space under her porch, but found nothing out of the ordinary. Just flowers, neatly tended, and a life that looked perfectly normal, until it wasn't. Jamal's trip to the community center was a bust at first. The place was busy, kids running around, volunteers handing out snacks. He showed the sketch to the woman at the front desk, but she didn't recognize it. "We get a lot of people through here," she said, barely looking up from her computer. Jamal was about to leave when he spotted a bulletin board covered in flyers. One of them caught his eye, a faded poster for a charity event from a few months back, with a logo that matched his sketch. He pulled it down and read the fine print, a fundraiser for a local scholarship program hosted by a woman named Evelyn Grant. The name didn't ring any bells, but the logo was a match. Jamal took a picture of the flyer and texted it to Marcus, who replied with a string of question marks. "You're obsessed, man," Marcus texted. Maybe he was, but Jamal couldn't let it go. He felt like he was on the edge of something big, something that could change everything. He just didn't know what. In Ohio, the police were starting to look at Clara's past, digging into her life before she became the town's favorite teacher. She'd grown up in the same town, left for college, then came back to teach. Her life seemed straightforward, but there were gaps. Years where she'd traveled, worked odd jobs, lived in other states. The police tracked down an old friend from her college days, a woman named Sarah, who now lived in Cleveland. Sarah was hesitant to talk, but she shared a few details. Clara was always restless, she said. She loved teaching, but sometimes she'd talk about wanting more, like she was searching for something. Sarah paused, then added, "She had a boyfriend back then, someone serious. But it ended badly. She never talked about him after that." The police pressed for a name, but Sarah couldn't remember. It was a long shot, but they wondered if this mystery man could be a piece of the puzzle. Was Clara running from her past? Or was her past catching up with her? Jamal's search was taking him down a different kind of path. He looked up Evelyn Grant online, but the name was too common. Hundreds of hits, none of them clearly the woman from the bus. He thought about going back to the community center, maybe asking more questions, but he wasn't sure where to start. Instead, he kept the note close, reading it every night before bed. "You're meant for more." The words felt like a challenge, a push to be something bigger than he'd ever imagined. But they also scared him. What if it was too good to be true? What if he followed this lead, and it led nowhere? His mom noticed he was spending more time on his phone, scrolling through old community center posts, looking for any hint of the woman. "You're gonna wear out that screen," she teased, but her smile faded when she saw his face. "Talk to me, Jamal," she said softly. He wanted to, but the words wouldn't come. Not yet. In Ohio, the town was holding a vigil for Clara, 8 months to the day since she'd vanished. The community center was packed, candles flickering in the hands of neighbors, students, and friends. Ellen spoke, her voice breaking as she thanked everyone for not giving up. "Clara's out there," she said, though her eyes betrayed her doubt. The police were there too, watching the crowd, wondering if the answer was in the room. Someone knew something, they had to. Clara's car didn't drive itself into that forest. And as the candles burned low, a new rumor started to spread. A hiker had seen a woman matching Clara's description near the forest months ago, walking alone, looking lost. The police couldn't confirm it, but it was enough to keep the town holding its breath, waiting for the next clue. Jamal, miles away, was holding his breath too. He'd found an old article about the scholarship fundraiser, mentioning Evelyn Grant as a retired educator who dedicated her life to helping kids like him. The pieces were starting to fit, but they were still so far apart. Was Evelyn the woman from the bus? Did she know Clara? And why did it feel like these two stories, his and Clara's, were circling each other, closer than he could see? The note in his pocket was burning a hole, and the forest in Ohio was keeping its secrets. What was next? You'll have to stick around to find out. The vigil for Clara Hensley left the Ohio town wrapped in a heavy silence, the kind that lingers after everyone's gone home, clutching their candles and their unanswered questions. Ellen stood outside the community center long after the crowd had dispersed, staring at the stars as if they might hold a clue to where her sister was. She couldn't shake the image of Clara's car in the forest, abandoned like it had been forgotten on purpose. The police had promised to keep looking, but their updates were vague. More tests, more interviews, no real answers. Ellen's mind kept circling back to what Mrs. Jenkins had said about Clara's late-night drives. Where was she going? Clara wasn't the type to wander aimlessly. She was organized, deliberate, the kind of person who planned her days down to the minute. Ellen started to wonder if Clara had been hiding something, maybe even from her. She remembered a conversation from last spring, when Clara had seemed distant, her eyes fixed on some far-off point. "Do you ever feel like you missed your chance?" Clara had asked, her voice soft, almost like she was talking to herself. Ellen had laughed it off, blaming retirement for making her sister restless, but now those words felt like a puzzle piece that didn't fit. Miles away, Jamal was piecing together his own puzzle. The article about Evelyn Grant was a start, but it wasn't enough. He'd gone back to the community center, this time with Marcus in tow for moral support. The place was quieter today, just a few kids doing homework and a couple of volunteers sorting donations. Jamal approached the same woman at the front desk, holding up the flyer with Evelyn's name. "Do you know her?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The woman, whose name tag read Tina, glanced at the flyer and frowned. "Evelyn? She used to volunteer here, but I haven't seen her in months. Nice lady, always talking about helping kids get scholarships." Jamal's heart raced. This had to be the woman from the bus, same vibe, same focus on kids like him. Tina didn't have much else to offer, but she pointed him to an older volunteer, Mr. Harris, who'd worked with Evelyn on the fundraiser. Mr. Harris was a wiry man with glasses that kept slipping down his nose. "Evelyn Grant," he said, scratching his chin. She was real passionate about her work, but she kept to herself. Said she was from a small town somewhere, moved to the city a while back. "I think she left after the fundraiser," said she had some personal stuff to take care of. Jamal pressed for more, but Mr. Harris just shrugged. "She didn't leave a number. Just left." The dead end stung, but the mention of a small town stuck with Jamal. Was it a coincidence, or was there a connection to Clara's story? In Ohio, the police were chasing their own loose threads. The rumor about a woman matching Clara's description in the forest had led to a new search, this time with volunteers combing the area where the car was found. They moved slowly, checking under bushes and behind trees, hoping for anything. A piece of clothing, a dropped item, something to prove Clara had been there. One volunteer, a young woman named Becca, who'd been one of Clara's students, found something odd. A small, tarnished key half buried in the dirt, a few yards from the car. It wasn't a car key or a house key. It looked older, like it belonged to a lockbox or a diary. Becca handed it to the police, her hands trembling. "Do you think it's hers?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The officer bagged it carefully, but he didn't have an answer. The key was sent to the lab, but it opened up a new wave of speculation. Did Clara have a secret stash somewhere? Was the key a clue to where she'd gone? Or why? The townsfolk couldn't stop talking about it, their theories growing darker. Some wondered if Clara had been involved in something dangerous, something that forced her to disappear. Others clung to the hope that she was still alive, maybe hiding, waiting for the right moment to come back. Jamal, meanwhile, was starting to feel like he was chasing a ghost. He'd shown the note to his best friend, Marcus, who thought it was either a scam or some kind of prank. "You sure she didn't just give you her number 'cause she thought you were cute?" Marcus teased, dodging the pillow Jamal threw at him. But Marcus's joking didn't ease the knot in Jamal's stomach. He couldn't stop thinking about the woman's eyes, the way they'd locked onto his, like she was seeing right through him. He decided to do some digging. He remembered she'd been carrying a tote bag with a logo on it, some kind of charity or organization, maybe? It was a blurry memory, but he sketched it out on a piece of paper, hoping it might jog something. He started asking around at school, showing the sketch to anyone who'd listen. Most people just shrugged, but one girl, Aisha, paused when she saw it. "That looks like the logo for that community center downtown," she said, squinting. "The one that does free tutoring and stuff." Jamal's heart skipped a beat. It was a lead, a small one, but it was something. He decided he'd check it out after school, even if it meant skipping basketball practice. In Ohio, the town was grappling with its own leads, or lack thereof. The police had interviewed everyone close to Clara, her neighbors, her former colleagues, even the kids she'd tutored after retirement. No one had anything concrete. Her neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, an older woman who'd known Clara for decades, mentioned something odd. "She was out of her garden a lot those last few weeks," she said. "More than usual. And sometimes, late at night, I'd see her car pull out, then come back hours later." The police pressed for details, but Mrs. Jenkins didn't have much else. "I thought she was just running errands," she admitted, her voice trembling. The idea of Clara sneaking off at night didn't fit with the woman everyone knew, but it was enough to make the police take a closer look at her house. They searched her garden, her shed, even the crawl space under her porch, but found nothing out of the ordinary. Just flowers, neatly tended, and a life that looked perfectly normal until it wasn't. Jamal's trip to the community center was a bust at first. The place was busy, kids running around, volunteers handing out snacks. He showed the sketch to the woman at the front desk, but she didn't recognize it. "We get a lot of people through here," she said, barely looking up from her computer. Jamal was about to leave when he spotted a bulletin board covered in flyers. One of them caught his eye, a faded poster for a charity event from a few months back, with a logo that matched his sketch. He pulled it down and read the fine print, a fundraiser for a local scholarship program hosted by a woman named Evelyn Grant. The name didn't ring any bells, but the logo was a match. Jamal took a picture of the flyer and texted it to Marcus, who replied with a string of question marks. "You're obsessed, man," Marcus texted. Maybe he was, but Jamal couldn't let it go. He felt like he was on the edge of something big, something that could change everything. He just didn't know what. In Ohio, the police were starting to look at Clara's past, digging into her life before she became the town's favorite teacher. She'd grown up in the same town, left for college, then came back to teach. Her life seemed straightforward, but there were gaps. Years where she'd traveled, worked odd jobs, lived in other states. The police tracked down an old friend from her college days, a woman named Sarah, who now lived in Cleveland. Sarah was hesitant to talk, but she shared a few details. Clara was always restless, she said. She loved teaching, but sometimes she'd talk about wanting more, like she was searching for something. Sarah paused, then added, "She had a boyfriend back then, someone serious, but it ended badly. She never talked about him after that." The police pressed for a name, but Sarah couldn't remember. It was a long shot, but they wondered if this mystery man could be a piece of the puzzle. Was Clara running from her past? Or was her past catching up with her? Jamal's search was taking him down a different kind of path. He looked up Evelyn Grant online, but the name was too common. Hundreds of hits, none of them clearly the woman from the bus. He thought about going back to the community center, maybe asking more questions, but he wasn't sure where to start. Instead, he kept the note close, reading it every night before bed. "You're meant for more." The words felt like a challenge, a push to be something bigger than he'd ever imagined. But they also scared him. What if it was too good to be true? What if he followed this lead, and it led nowhere? His mom noticed he was spending more time on his phone, scrolling through old community center posts, looking for any hint of the woman. "You're gonna wear out that screen," she teased, but her smile faded when she saw his face. "Talk to me, Jamal," she said softly. He wanted to, but the words wouldn't come. Not yet. In Ohio, the town was holding a vigil for Clara, 8 months to the day since she'd vanished. The community center was packed, candles flickering in the hands of neighbors, students, and friends. Ellen spoke, her voice breaking as she thanked everyone for not giving up. "Clara's out there," she said, though her eyes betrayed her doubt. The police were there too, watching the crowd, wondering if the answer was in the room. Someone knew something, they had to. Clara's car didn't drive itself into that forest. And as the candles burned low, a new rumor started to spread. A hiker had seen a woman matching Clara's description near the forest months ago, walking alone, looking lost. The police couldn't confirm it, but it was enough to keep the town holding its breath, waiting for the next clue. Jamal, miles away, was holding his breath too. He'd found an old article about the scholarship fundraiser, mentioning Evelyn Grant as a retired educator who dedicated her life to helping kids like him. The pieces were starting to fit, but they were still so far apart. Was Evelyn the woman from the bus? Did she know Clara? And why did it feel like these two stories, his and Clara's, were circling each other, closer than he could see? The note in his pocket was burning a hole, and the forest in Ohio was keeping its secrets. What was next? You'll have to stick around to find out. The air in Ohio felt thicker now, heavy with the weight of too many questions and not enough answers. The anonymous tip about Clara being seen at the gas station near the forest had the town on edge, and the police were scrambling to verify it. They pulled records, interviewed the gas station clerk, even checked nearby traffic cameras, but the trail was cold. 8 months cold. The tarnished key Becca had found was still a mystery, sitting in an evidence bag at the station, mocking everyone who thought it might unlock Clara's fate. Ellen was losing sleep, her days consumed by that notebook she'd found in Clara's desk. She read it over and over, the cryptic phrases, "He's still out there, I owe them," burning into her mind. She'd started asking around town, quietly, about Clara's past, hoping someone might remember the boyfriend Sarah had mentioned. An old colleague, Mr. Thompson, who'd taught alongside Clara for years, hesitated when Ellen brought it up. "There was someone a long time ago," he said, his voice low. Clara didn't like to talk about it, said it was a mistake she'd rather forget. He didn't know the man's name, but he remembered Clara's face when she'd mentioned him, tight, like she was holding back a storm. Ellen's gut told her this man, whoever he was, might be the key to everything. But how do you find a ghost from decades ago? In the city, Jamal's world was tilting. The note from the bus was no longer just a curiosity. It was an obsession. After leaving the voicemail, he'd waited days for a response, checking his phone every hour, his stomach in knots. Then, late one night, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Meet me at the community center tomorrow, 3 p.m. Come alone." No name, no explanation, just those words glowing on his screen. Jamal's heart pounded so hard, he could hear it in his ears. Was this Evelyn? Or someone else entirely? He thought about telling Marcus or his mom, but the come alone part stopped him. He didn't want to drag them into something he couldn't explain. The next morning, he barely focused at school, his mind racing with possibilities. Was this the moment everything changed? Or was he walking into trouble? He remembered that fleeting figure across the street, the one he'd thought was watching him. The memory made his skin crawl, but it also pushed him forward. He had to know what the note meant, what the woman saw in him that day on the bus. Back in Ohio, the police were chasing a new lead, a faint one, but it was something. A local farmer, Mr. Dawson, had come forward after the vigil, saying he'd seen headlights in the forest the night Clara disappeared. He hadn't thought much of it at the time, assuming it was kids messing around, but now he wasn't so sure. The police sent a team back to the forest, this time with metal detectors, hoping to find anything else that might have been missed. They found nothing new, but the tire track they'd spotted before was starting to tell a story. It wasn't from Clara's car. It was wider, heavier, like it came from a truck or an SUV. The idea of a second vehicle sent a chill through the investigation. Someone else had been there, maybe with Clara, maybe against her will. The police started checking vehicle registrations in town, but it was a needle in a haystack. The townsfolk were growing restless, their hope fading into fear. At the diner, people whispered over coffee about the key, the tire track, the notebook. What if Clara was running from someone? One woman said, her voice hushed. What if they caught up with her? The question hung in the air, unanswered, as Ellen overheard from a corner booth, her hands trembling around her mug. Jamal arrived at the community center at 2:55 p.m., his palms sweaty, the note folded tightly in his pocket. The place was quieter than usual, the after-school rush not yet started. He scanned the room, looking for the woman from the bus, but no one stood out. Tina, the front desk volunteer, gave him a nod, but she was busy with paperwork. Jamal paced near the bulletin board, his eyes darting to the door every few seconds. At exactly 3 o'clock, a woman walked in, not Evelyn, but someone older, maybe in her 60s, with a sharp gaze and a scarf tied loosely around her neck. She walked straight toward him, her steps deliberate. "You're Jamal?" she asked, her voice low but firm. He nodded, his throat dry. "I'm a friend of Evelyn's," she said, glancing around like she was making sure no one was listening.
"She told me about you."
"Said you're special." Jamal's mind raced. Special?
Why?
Before he could ask, the woman handed him an envelope, sealed, with his name written in that same neat handwriting from the note. "Don't open it here," she warned. "And don't tell anyone. Not yet." She turned to leave, but Jamal grabbed her arm, his voice shaking. "Where's Evelyn? What's this about?" The woman's eyes softened, but she pulled away. "She's not here anymore. Just trust her. Read the letter." And then she was gone, disappearing out the door before Jamal could say another word. In Ohio, Ellen was starting to feel like she was losing her mind. She'd taken Clara's notebook home, reading it late into the night, searching for anything that might make sense of her sister's disappearance. One page stopped her cold, a list of names, none of which she recognized, except one, Evelyn. No last name, just Evelyn scrawled in the margin, underlined twice. Ellen's heart skipped. Was this a coincidence, or was Evelyn someone from Clara's past? She called Sarah, the college friend, waking her up at midnight. Did Clara ever mention someone named Evelyn? Ellen asked, her voice urgent. Sarah was groggy, but thought for a moment. Maybe, yeah, I think there was an Evelyn. A friend from when she was traveling after college. They were close for a while, but Clara stopped talking about her. I don't know why. Ellen hung up, her mind spinning. She didn't know what it meant, but the name felt like a lifeline, a thread connecting Clara's past to her present. She decided to take the notebook to the police in the morning, but as she set it down, she noticed something she'd missed, a tiny sketch in the corner of the page, a logo that looked vaguely familiar, like something she'd seen on a flyer years ago. Jamal sat on a bench outside the community center, the envelope in his hands. He wanted to rip it open, but the woman's warning echoed in his head. He tucked it into his backpack, his heart pounding as he walked home. The city felt different now, like every shadow held a secret. He kept looking over his shoulder, half expecting to see that figure from across the street again. When he got home, his mom was still at work, the apartment quiet except for the hum of the fridge. He locked the door, sat on his bed, and opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, written in the same handwriting as the note. Jamal, it read, "You don't know me, but I've known you for a long time. Your kindness on that bus proved I was right about you. There's a scholarship waiting, one that can change your life. But you need to find me first. Start where it all began." No signature, no address, just those words and a small, hand-drawn logo, the same one from the community center flyer. Jamal's hands shook. Find her? Where it all began. Did that mean the bus, the community center, or something else entirely? He felt like he was standing on the edge of a cliff, the ground crumbling beneath him. In Ohio, the police were starting to zero in on the forest. The tire track had led to a short list of vehicles in town, but none were a perfect match. Then, a new tip came in. A hunter claimed he'd found an old campsite deep in the woods, not far from where Clara's car was found. It was abandoned, just a fire pit and some scattered trash, but one item stood out. A torn piece of fabric, blue, like the sweater found in Clara's car. The police bagged it, their hopes rising, but the lab results would take days. The hunter mentioned something else, something he'd brushed off at the time. A faint sound, like someone crying, the night he'd found the campsite. He couldn't be sure, but it was enough to make the police double their efforts. They brought in more search teams, combing the forest with dogs and drones, but the deeper they went, the more it felt like the woods were hiding something. Ellen heard about the fabric and drove to the station, demanding answers. "Is it hers?" she asked, her voice breaking. The officer was kind but firm.
"We don't know yet, Ellen.
"We're doing everything we can." But everything wasn't enough, not when Clara was still out there, or maybe not. Jamal couldn't sleep that night, the letter burning a hole in his mind. He kept thinking about where it all began. The bus? The community center? Or something deeper, something tied to Evelyn's past? He pulled out the photo from the fundraiser, staring at her face, trying to remember every detail from that day on the bus. Then it hit him, her scarf. The woman who'd given him the envelope had worn a scarf, blue, like the one in Clara's car from the news reports he'd seen online. Was it a coincidence? Or was there a connection he couldn't see yet? He felt like he was holding pieces of a puzzle, but the picture was still blurry. The next morning, he decided to go back to the bus stop where it all started, hoping for a clue, anything to point him toward Evelyn. In Ohio, the forest was becoming a maze of secrets. A volunteer found another clue, a small, weathered notebook page, caught in a thorn bush, with Clara's handwriting. It was just a fragment, but the words were clear. "I have to make it right." The police didn't know what it meant, but it was enough to keep the town on edge. everyone waiting for the next piece of the puzzle. Ellen clutched the notebook, the logo in the corner nagging at her. Jamal, standing at the bus stop, felt the weight of the letter in his pocket. Two stories, two mysteries, spiraling closer together, but still out of reach. What was Clara running from? Who was Evelyn, and what did she want with Jamal? The answers were so close, but the tension was unbearable. Stick around, because the truth is just around the corner. At the bus stop, Jamal stood under the flickering streetlight, the letter from Evelyn tucked in his pocket like a live wire. The city hummed around him, cars honking, people rushing by, but he felt alone, like the world was holding its breath. He'd hoped coming back to where it all started would spark something, a memory, a clue, anything to make sense of Evelyn's cryptic words. Start where it all began. But the bus stop was just a bus stop. Cracked concrete, a faded schedule, and a couple of strangers waiting for the next ride. He was about to leave when he noticed something scratched into the metal bench, almost hidden under layers of graffiti. A tiny version of the logo from the community center flyer, etched like someone had done it with a key. His heart skipped. Was this Evelyn's doing? Or was he seeing connections where there were none? He snapped a photo, his hands shaking, and sent it to Marcus with a quick text. Found this. Weird, right? Marcus's reply came fast. Dude, you're deep in this. Be careful. Jamal didn't know what careful meant anymore. The logo, the letter, the woman who'd vanished after handing him the envelope. It all felt like a puzzle with missing pieces, and he was starting to wonder if he was meant to find them or if they were meant to find him. In Ohio, the discovery of the notebook page in the forest had sent the town into a frenzy. I have to make it right, Clara had written, and those words echoed in Ellen's mind as she sat at the police station, clutching the notebook she'd found in Clara's desk. The logo she'd noticed in the corner, a small, stylized tree with a star above it, was now burned into her memory. She'd seen it before. She was sure, but where? The police were skeptical when she showed them, saying it could be anything. A doodle, a coincidence, but Ellen wasn't convinced. She'd spent the night digging through Clara's old papers, hoping for answers, and found a faded letter tucked in an envelope, postmarked 20 years ago from a city hundreds of miles away. It was addressed to Clara, signed Evelyn, with no last name. The letter was short, almost formal, thanking Clara for her help with the project and promising to stay in touch. Ellen's hands trembled as she read it. Evelyn. The same name from the notebook. Was this the Evelyn from Clara's past? And what was the project? She took the letter to the police, who added it to the growing pile of evidence, but their faces said they were drowning in clues that led nowhere. The fabric, the key, the tire track, now this letter. Every piece seemed to point to a bigger story, one Clara had kept hidden from everyone. Jamal's phone buzzed as he walked home from the bus stop, the city lights casting long shadows across the sidewalk. It was another text from the unknown number. You're closer than you think. Check the library. No explanation, no signature. His stomach twisted. The library? He hadn't been there since his last research session, digging into Evelyn Grant's past. Was someone watching him, tracking his every move? The thought made his skin crawl, but he couldn't stop now. The next morning, he skipped breakfast and headed to the city library, the letter and photo of the logo stuffed in his backpack. The library was quiet, just a few early birds flipping through books or typing at computers. Jamal wandered to the local history section, not sure what he was looking for, but hoping something would jump out. As he scanned the shelves, he noticed a book slightly out of place, its spine marked with a familiar logo, the same tree and star. His heart raced as he pulled it down. Tucked inside was a newspaper clipping, yellowed with age, about a scholarship fund started by two women, Evelyn Grant and Clara Hensley. The photo showed them side by side, smiling, younger but unmistakable. Jamal's breath caught. Clara Hensley, the missing teacher from the news. How was she connected to Evelyn? And why was this clipping hidden here, like it was waiting for him? In Ohio, the police were grappling with a second plot twist that turned the investigation upside down. A lab report on the fabric found in the forest came back, confirming it was from Clara's sweater, the same one left in her car. But there was something else. Traces of a rare type of soil, not native to the forest where the car was found. It matched a quarry 20 miles away, a place Clara had no reason to visit. The police shifted their focus, sending a team to the quarry to search for more clues. What they found made everyone's blood run cold. A second set of tire tracks, matching the ones near Clara's car, and a single shoe, weathered but recognizable as Clara's from a photo Ellen had provided. The quarry was remote, surrounded by jagged rocks and deep pits, the kind of place you didn't stumble into by accident. The police kept it quiet, not wanting to spark panic, but word leaked, and the town buzzed with fear. Had Clara been taken there? Was she still alive? Or was this the end of the trail? Ellen overheard the rumors at the grocery store, her hands shaking as she dropped a bag of apples. She confronted the lead detective, demanding to know if Clara's shoe meant what she feared. "We're not jumping to conclusions," the detective said, but his eyes betrayed him. Ellen felt the world closing in, the hope she clung to slipping through her fingers. Jamal was reeling from the library discovery. He sat in a quiet corner, the clippings spread out in front of him. The article was from decades ago, detailing how Evelyn and Clara had started a scholarship fund for underprivileged kids, raising money through community events. But there was a line that made Jamal's heart stop. The fund was paused after a dispute between the founders, with no further details provided. A dispute? What happened between them? He Googled Clara Hensley on his phone, and the headlines hit him like a punch. Retired Ohio teacher missing, car found in forest. The pieces were starting to connect, but they were jagged, like a puzzle forced together. Was Evelyn's note to him tied to Clara's disappearance? He thought about the woman at the community center, the one who'd given him the envelope. Her scarf, blue like the fabric in the news reports, felt like more than a coincidence. He sent a text to the unknown number. "Who are you? What's this about Clara?" No reply came, but he felt eyes on him again, like someone was watching from the shadows of the library stacks. In Ohio, Ellen was chasing her own lead. The logo in Clara's notebook had sparked a memory. She'd seen it years ago, on a flyer Clara had brought home from a trip. She dug through old boxes in Clara's attic, her hands dusty and her heart pounding, until she found it, a crumpled flyer for a scholarship fundraiser, the same tree and star logo in the corner. The event was hosted in a city hundreds of miles away, and Clara's name was listed as a co-organizer, alongside Evelyn Grant. Ellen's mind raced. Clara had never mentioned this, not once. Why had she kept it a secret? She called Sarah again, her voice trembling. Did Clara ever talk about a scholarship fund? Sarah paused, then said, "Yeah, she was proud of it, but it fell apart." She wouldn't say why, just that it was a mistake. Ellen's throat tightened. A mistake. The same word Mr. Thompson had used about Clara's old boyfriend. Was it all connected? Evelyn, the scholarship, the mysterious man from Clara's past? She took the flyer to the police, who were now cross-referencing it with the letter and the notebook, but they warned her not to get her hopes up. "It's a long shot," the detective said. Ellen wanted to scream. Long shots were all she had left. Jamal decided to take a risk. He went back to the community center, this time with the clipping and the letter. He found Mr. Harris, the volunteer who'd known Evelyn, and showed him the article. The old man's face changed, his eyes narrowing. "Where'd you get this?" he asked, his voice sharp. Jamal explained about the note, the bus, the library. Mr. Harris leaned back, rubbing his temples. Evelyn and Clara, they were close back in the day. But something happened. Evelyn left town after their fund collapsed. Never heard from her again until she showed up here last year. Out of the blue. Jamal pressed him. What happened to their fund? Why'd it fall apart? Mr. Harris shook his head. Money went missing. Not a lot, but enough to cause a fight. They never told me the details, but it was bad. Jamal's mind spun. Missing money? A fight? Was that why Evelyn was reaching out to him now? And what did it have to do with Clara's disappearance? Before he could ask more, Mr. Harris stood up, his face pale. You're digging into something big, kid. Be careful who you talk to. In Ohio, The quarry search turned up another clue, a piece of jewelry, a simple silver bracelet, buried in the dirt near the shoe. Ellen identified it immediately. Clara's, a gift from their mother years ago. The police were tight-lipped, but the find shifted the mood in town from hope to dread. The forest, the quarry, the clues, they were all pointing to something dark, something Clara might not have walked away from. Ellen couldn't stop thinking about the flyer, the logo, Evelyn's name. She felt like she was standing on the edge of the truth, but it was just out of reach. Jamal, back in the city, felt the same. He stood at the bus stop again, the logo etched in the bench staring back at him. His phone buzzed with another text. "You're almost there. Find the lockbox." A lockbox? His mind flashed to the key from the news, the one found near Clara's car. Was it the same key? Was Evelyn leading him to Clara? The stakes were higher than ever, the truth closer, but more dangerous. The forest, the quarry, the letter, the logo, everything was converging, and the next move could change it all. Stick around, because you won't believe what's coming. Jamal's heart pounded as he stood at the bus stop, the cryptic text about a lockbox burning in his mind. The logo etched into the bench seemed to stare back at him, a silent challenge to keep going. He couldn't shake the image of the key from the news reports, the one found near Clara Hensley's car in that Ohio forest. Was it the key to the lockbox Evelyn's message mentioned? He didn't know how it all connected, but he felt like he was inches from the truth. He decided to head back to the library, the last place he'd found a clue, hoping the lockbox was there. The city was buzzing with evening traffic, but Jamal barely noticed, his focus locked on the envelope, the clipping, and the photo of Evelyn and Clara together. He texted Marcus, telling him he was chasing one last lead, but didn't say where. "You're crazy, man," Marcus texted back. "Don't do anything stupid." But Jamal was past caution. He had to know what Evelyn wanted, why she'd chosen him, and how Clara's disappearance fit into it all. In Ohio, Ellen was at the police station, her hands clutching the flyer with the tree and star logo. The discovery of Clara's bracelet at the quarry had crushed her, but the connection to Evelyn gave her a flicker of hope. She'd convinced the police to dig deeper into the scholarship fund Clara and Evelyn had started years ago. The detective, a tired man named Carter, had tracked down an old bank record tied to the fund. It showed a withdrawal, a big one, right before the fund collapsed. The money had gone to an account linked to a man named Robert Klein, someone Clara had never mentioned. Carter's team found Klein living in a small town an hour from the quarry. When they brought him in for questioning, he was nervous, his story shaky. "I knew Clara years ago," he admitted. "We were involved, but I haven't seen her since." He claimed the money was a loan, but his eyes darted around the room, and Ellen, watching through the one-way glass, knew he was lying. She felt it in her bones. Klein was part of this, and he knew where Clara was. Jamal reached the library just as it was closing, the librarian giving him a stern look as he slipped inside. He headed straight to the local history section, his eyes scanning for anything out of place. Tucked behind a row of books, he found it, a small, rusted lockbox, the same logo etched on its lid. His hands shook as he pulled it out, its weight heavy in his hands. There was no key, but the lock looked old, like it could be forced open. He glanced around, making sure no one was watching, and used a paperclip from his backpack to pick at it. After a few tense minutes, the lock clicked, and the lid popped open. Inside was a stack of letters, yellowed and brittle, and a small photo of two women, Clara and Evelyn, younger, laughing together. The letters were addressed to Jamal, but not the Jamal he was. They were to a boy named Jamal Carter, born years before him, from a woman who signed herself C. His head spun. Who was this other Jamal? And why was his name on these letters? One letter mentioned a scholarship, a promise to make things right, and a warning. Don't trust Robert. Jamal's blood ran cold. Robert who? He stuffed the letters in his backpack, his mind racing. He needed to find Evelyn now. In Ohio, the police pressed Klein harder. He broke after an hour, his voice trembling as he spilled the truth. "Clara came to me last year," he said. "She wanted to restart the scholarship fund, said she owed it to someone. I told her I didn't have the money anymore, it was gone, spent years ago." Klein's face crumpled. She was upset, said she'd find a way to fix it. Then she stopped calling. He swore he hadn't seen her since, but the police weren't buying it. They searched his property and found a truck with tires matching the tracks from the forest and quarry. Klein's story unraveled further when they discovered a hidden compartment in his garage, containing a scarf, blue, like the one in Clara's car, and a map with the quarry marked. Ellen's heart stopped when she saw the scarf. "That's Clara's," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. The police organized a new search of the quarry, this time with heavy equipment, fearing the worst. Ellen clung to the flyer, the logo now a symbol of her sister's secret life, one she'd never shared. Jamal was back at the community center, the lockbox letters burning a hole in his backpack. He found Tina at the front desk and showed her the photo of Clara and Evelyn. "Do you know anything about this?" he asked, his voice urgent. Tina's eyes widened. "That's Evelyn and Clara Hensley, the teacher who went missing." She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "Evelyn came here last year, talking about restarting some old scholarship. She said it was for a kid named Jamal, someone she and Clara had promised to help." Jamal's knees felt weak. "Me?" he asked, barely audible. Tina shook her head. "Not you, I don't think. Someone from years ago."
She was sad about it.
Said they'd let him down. Before Jamal could ask more, his phone buzzed with another text. "You found it. Meet me at the quarry. Tonight." The quarry. The same place from the news, where Clara's shoe and bracelet were found. Jamal's stomach dropped. Was Evelyn there? Was Clara? He didn't know if he was walking into answers or danger, but he had to go. The quarry was dark and desolate when Jamal arrived, the city lights a distant glow. He'd taken a bus and walked the last mile, his flashlight shaking in his hand. The police were there, their floodlights cutting through the night as they dug near the spot where Clara's shoe had been found. Jamal stayed in the shadows, his eyes scanning for Evelyn. Then he saw her, a figure near the edge of the quarry, her scarf catching the light. He approached, his heart in his throat. "Evelyn," he called softly. She turned, and it was her, the woman from the bus, older now, her face lined with worry. "You're here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I knew you'd find it." Before he could ask about the letters, the lockbox, or Clara, she grabbed his arm. "Clara's alive," she said, her eyes wild. "She's been hiding, trying to fix what we broke. But he's after her, Robert." Jamal's mind reeled. Robert Klein? The man from the letters? Before he could speak, a shout came from the police nearby. They'd found something, a hidden bunker, buried under the quarry's edge. Inside was Clara Hensley, weak but alive, her eyes wide with fear and relief. The town erupted when news broke that Clara was found. Ellen rushed to the hospital, sobbing as she held her sister's hand. Clara's story came out in fragments. She'd gone to confront Klein about the missing scholarship money, wanting to make things right for a boy they'd promised to help years ago, a boy named Jamal Carter, who died before they could fulfill their promise. Guilt had driven Clara to track down Klein, but he'd panicked, locking her in the bunker to keep her quiet. Evelyn had been searching for her ever since, leaving clues for Jamal, the new Jamal, hoping his kindness meant he could carry on their mission. The scholarship fund was real, and Evelyn had restarted it, naming Jamal as its first recipient. He stood in the hospital room, clutching the letters, overwhelmed. The police arrested Klein, his lies exposed, and the town began to heal, but questions lingered. Why had Evelyn chosen Jamal?
How had she known about him?
Then came the final twist. As Jamal read through the letters again, he found a photo he'd missed, a young boy, maybe 5, with his eyes. Tucked in the back was a birth certificate, listing Clara Hensley as the mother and Robert Klein as the father. The boy's name, Jamal Carter. Not him, but someone tied to him, someone Clara and Evelyn had loved and lost. Jamal's mom, Lisa, confirmed it later, her voice shaking. "You were named after your cousin," she said. "Clara's son." She never told anyone, but she loved him fiercely. Jamal's world tilted. The note, the scholarship, the clues, they weren't random. They were Clara's way of reaching out, through Evelyn, to honor her son by giving another Jamal a chance. The quarry, the lockbox, the logo, it all led to this moment, a promise kept across decades. But as Jamal looked at Clara, recovering in her hospital bed, he couldn't shake one last question. What else was she hiding? The truth was out, but the shadows of the past still lingered, waiting to be uncovered. The hospital room was quiet except for the soft beeping of Clara's heart monitor, a steady rhythm that felt like a miracle to Ellen. She sat by her sister's bed, holding Clara's hand, the weight of the past 8 months lifting but leaving behind a tangle of emotions. Clara was frail, her face pale, but her eyes held the same warmth Ellen remembered from their childhood. The truth about Clara's disappearance had shaken the small Ohio town, but finding her alive in that quarry bunker was a victory no one had dared hope for. Robert Klein's arrest had brought some closure, his confession about locking Clara away to silence her questions about the stolen scholarship money answered the biggest mystery. But for Ellen, the real question wasn't just why Clara had vanished, it was why she'd kept so much of her life hidden, even from her own sister. As Clara stirred, her voice weak, she whispered, "I'm sorry, Ellen. I thought I could fix it alone." Ellen squeezed her hand, tears falling. "You're here now. That's what matters." But she couldn't help wondering about the shadows in Clara's past, the scholarship, Evelyn, and the son no one knew about. In the city, Jamal stood outside the hospital, the letters from the lockbox tucked in his backpack. The revelation that he was named after Clara's son, a boy who died young, hit him like a tidal wave. His mom, Lisa, had filled in the gaps after he showed her the birth certificate. "Clara was your aunt in a way," Lisa said, her voice soft. "Your cousin Jamal was her world, but after he passed, she shut that part of her life away. I named you after him to keep his memory alive." Jamal's head was still spinning. The note from Evelyn, the scholarship, the clues, it all made sense now. Evelyn and Clara had started the scholarship fund for Clara's son, but when the money disappeared, stolen by Robert Klein, their dream collapsed. Guilt had driven Clara to confront Klein, leading to her disappearance, and Evelyn had spent months searching for her, leaving clues for Jamal to follow, believing his kindness mirrored the boy they'd lost. The scholarship was real, and Jamal was its first recipient, a full ride to college, a chance to change his life. But standing there, the weight of his cousin's name felt heavier than any prize. Clara's recovery was slow, but the town rallied around her. Neighbors brought casseroles, students sent cards, and Becca, the former student who'd found the key in the forest, visited daily, reading Clara her favorite books. The key, it turned out, belonged to the lockbox Jamal had found, a relic of Clara's past she'd hidden away, filled with letters to her son. The police returned it to her, and she clutched it like a lifeline, tears in her eyes as she told Ellen about the boy she'd lost to illness years ago. "I wanted to make it right for him," Clara said. The scholarship was supposed to be his legacy. Ellen listened, her heart breaking for the sister she thought she knew. The logo, the tree and star, was a symbol Clara and Evelyn had designed for the fund, a nod to their hope for a brighter future. Finding it in the forest, on the flyer, in the notebook, had been Clara's way of holding on to that dream, even when it seemed lost. Jamal met Evelyn a week later, at the community center where it all began. She looked tired but relieved, her scarf gone, her eyes softer than he remembered from the bus. "You found her," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I knew you would." Jamal asked the question that had haunted him. "Why me? Why did you pick me?" Evelyn smiled, a sad, knowing look. "I saw you give up your seat that day. No hesitation, no expectation. It reminded me of him, of Clara's Jamal. I knew you were the one to carry this forward." She explained that after Clara's son died, she and Clara had drifted apart, torn by grief and the stolen money. When Clara disappeared, Evelyn had come back to the city, hoping to find her and restart the scholarship in their son's name. Jamal's act of kindness was the spark she needed. "You're his legacy now," she said, handing him a folder with the scholarship details. Jamal opened it, his hands trembling. A full ride to any college he chose, funded by Evelyn's savings and donations she'd gathered over the years. The town of Ohio began to heal, the forest and quarry no longer places of fear but reminders of resilience. Clara's story spread, inspiring vigils and fundraisers to support her recovery and restart the scholarship fund. Ellen took charge, organizing events with Becca's help, determined to honor her sister's dream. Jamal visited Clara in the hospital, bringing the lockbox letters. When he showed them to her, she cried, touching the photo of her son. "You're like him," she told Jamal, her voice barely above a whisper. "He would have been kind, just like you." Jamal didn't know what to say, but he felt a connection, like he was part of something bigger. He promised Clara he'd make the most of the scholarship, not just for himself, but for the boy who'd inspired it. Back in the city, Jamal told his mom everything. Lisa listened, her eyes shining with pride and pain. "You've got a chance now," she said, hugging him tight. "Make it count." Jamal nodded, the weight of his name settling into something he could carry. He started applying to colleges, dreaming of a future he'd never thought possible. Marcus, ever the skeptic, grinned when Jamal showed him the scholarship papers. "You're gonna be some big shot now, huh?" he teased, but his voice was warm. Jamal laughed, but inside, he felt the responsibility of carrying a legacy, of Clara's son, of Evelyn's hope, of a kindness that had changed everything. As Clara grew stronger, she shared more with Ellen, piecing together the fragments of her past. Robert Klein had been a mistake, a man she'd loved but who'd betrayed her, taking the scholarship money and leaving her to pick up the pieces. Her guilt over failing her son had driven her to confront him, a decision that nearly cost her life. But finding Jamal, the new Jamal, felt like redemption. The town held a celebration when Clara came home, the community center packed with people who'd never stopped believing. Ellen stood by her side, the flyer with the tree and star logo framed on the wall, a symbol of second chances. For Jamal, the ending wasn't just about the scholarship. It was about understanding who he was named for and why his small act of kindness had rippled so far. He kept the photo of Clara's son, a reminder of the boy who'd inspired it all. As he walked to the bus stop one last time, the etched logo on the bench felt like a promise kept. The mysteries were solved. Clara was home. Klein was behind bars. The scholarship was real, but the takeaway lingered. A single moment of kindness could change lives, even across decades. Clara's story, Jamal's story, they were tied together by choices, by secrets, by hope. And as the bus pulled up, Jamal smiled, knowing he was ready to write the next chapter, carrying a legacy that was bigger than himself.